And welcome back. And we are at part 2 of this week's New Comics, bitches! So, let's get back into it. So, we've got, again, we talked, a couple good issues last segment, one bad issue, and now we're going to talk about arguably one of the worst of the week. Or arguably the worst of the week. Definitely one of the worst. Batman The Dark Knight #2. This went... the first issue was kind of like, maybe. There's some interesting ideas seem to be at work here. I like the fact that, Paul Jenkins kind of came in to help out with the writing so that Finch could concentrate more on the artwork. And then I said to myself, after reading this went from a maybe to an absolute no. There is no way I'm getting another issue of this comic. It's just so awful. I mean, it was so unbelievably bad. It's like, I know that the mystery behind this particular adventure that Batman is currently on is ultimately who that kind of white rabbit, sexy cosplayer chick is supposed to be. But Jenkins and Finch, their idea really seems to it's almost to me ripping off the storyline behind the game of, behind Batman Arkham Asylum, the game. Not Batman Arkham City, but Batman Arkham Asylum. Which is where ultimately it leads to that, Joker has, he has mixed Bane venom and, created this new stuff called Titan that he's essentially, used to Hulk out. But now every, escapee from Arkham is on the loose and they're all juiced up with this shit. So, he's fighting Two-Face, who's all juiced up, and, eventually he does he defeats him, and then, Damian and Dick are on another part of town, and they are dealing with a new, I'm assuming a new, because it looks like Arnold Wesker, but Arnold Wesker is dead, but dealing with a new Scarface, and he's all hulked out. And this was the one part of the comic that I actually did like, was just how fucking disturbing this idea was, that he actually is using a real human being, a dead human being, but a cop that he's just killed. He's stuck his hand in his back and is kind of holding on probably to his spinal cord and using this this human being as his puppet. That was really disturbing. I thought that was really, it wasn't too over the top where I could say to myself, you know what, I just don't buy it. It worked in the context of the comic. So that was the only good thing that I could say about this comic. The book's characters have no individual voice. It's just, neither Jenkins nor Finch really seem to have a handle on Bruce Wayne. It just seemed to be like, okay, well, it's Batman. Let's just kind of write what Batman would normally say. It's very much an autopiloted book. And the showcase here is supposed to be Finch's art. But you know what? I'm actually sick of David Finch's art by this point in time. Yeah, it's really nice, and it's cool to look at, and all of his women are beautiful, and all of his villains are very well defined, but then all of his guys look exactly the same. It's like the men and the women, they all look entirely the same. So there's no real distinct voice, except for Alfred's. Because but even that kind of seems on autopilot. It's like, well, everybody knows how to write Alfred. He's snooty. He's a little bit, he's kind of like, I kind of put it this way. He's kind of like the straight Tim Gunn. He's very proper. He's, kind of, he's sarcastic. He's a little bit not catty, but he does have the little, zing every once in a while at Bruce. And that is one of the great things about Alfred. But ultimately, this comic just doesn't find its voice anywhere, and it's upsetting. It's very depressing. Okay. Going back here, we've got also another big #1 from this week, The Incredible Hulk #1, again by Jason Aaron and Mark Silvestri, the legendary Mark Silvestri. Excuse me, I have to remember to put in legendary before I say the name Mark Silvestri. This is a book with really, really solid ideas. It's just crazy from the word go. You know, the Hulk is living underground, and I don't know if it's like with those little like kind of mole people that the mole man kind of bosses around. I don't know if this is, you know, what kind of race these people are, but he's, you know, fighting this huge monster and kills it, and basically it's to feed these people, and now it's just the Hulk, and he is separated from Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner is no longer part of the Hulk. Hulk now has his own persona. And that's where the book ultimately is the most interesting, is the fact that that the Hulk has his own identity now. And he sees the identity is that the reason that he's living amongst these people and not up top is because he sees himself as a monster. And he knows this is where he belongs. So there is there's a degree of self-awareness to know that he just doesn't belong amongst people. You know, he's, as far as, the cold, because basically this whole book has been one Jekyll and Hyde metaphor, but it's ultimately, Hyde has now completely separated from Jekyll. They're completely separate people now. And Aaron does, this is a really, really great job on a tough subject, and on another big #1 issue, in 1 week. So he's got 2 major #1 issues that are going to help guide Marvel through the next year. And I'll talk about the whole kind of year thing later. So it gets off story-wise to a really exciting and a really twisted and fucked up ending, which I'm not going to give away. But the thing that ultimately does not work for me, and again, this is a personal thing, but it's Mark Silvestri. I'm sorry, legendary Mark Silvestri. Mark Silvestri is one of those artists who came in the era of the McFarlanes and the Liefelds, and his art style. Because just if you look kind of closely at the proportions here on just this cover drawing of the Hulk, you see that his head is way too small for his body. This should be, he's trying to make him just look like this, enormousized human, but still with this, this big hulking creature, but with, this kind of human head. And that's where it's too distracting for me. As detailed and as liney as the art is, that's ultimately where it loses, because it's too liney, it's too stylized, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and it's sad. Because I admire everything else that's going on in this book. I admire the ideas that are being put forth. I admire how creative Jason Aaron is with this, but Mark Silvestri, I've never liked his work, and I continue to dislike it, because he's an artist that hasn't grown a bit. He said, okay, well, this is my style, and I'm going to do this forever. From the 80s to now, we're getting close to 2012 here, so, and that he's, you know, a fan favorite. And I can understand why, because, you know, Todd McFarlane's a fan favorite. Rob Liefeld's a fan favorite. I don't understand why. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I liked Todd McFarlane back in the, you know, late 80s, you know, early 90s. But then it just got old. So this whole art style, to me, is really old. It's time for fresh. It's time for new. As far as new artists, I'm not saying that old artists should never work again, but I'm saying that their work does have to mature. It does have to, you know, you go with, you know, you can't just go with one style forever, because that's ultimately where, you know, especially if it's a style that, again, and this is me just more or less talking out of my ass here, and I think that you're probably tuning in on that, because I just don't like his work, and I never will, until he breaks out of this, you know, small head on the big body thing. You know, it's proportionally it looks stupid, and that's a lot of panels in this. It just looks wrong. You know, just all the added little lines and all the, you know, very exacting detail on all these other things that really don't need it. So, anyway. Moving along. Spider Island, Cloak and Dagger, number 3 of 3. So this completes the Cloak and Dagger mini. And I gotta say, I did not see this, for those of you who have read it, I'm not going to screw it up, I did not see this coming. I really didn't see it coming. It's something that's been a lot of years in the making, as far as these two characters are concerned, since they were created in the, you know, the early or mid-80s. And, you know, something finally happens between them that is a thing that fans of these characters will enjoy. But, you know, ultimately, it's not, the reason for it is two layered. It's dual layered. Anyway, I'm not going to give it away if you haven't read it. This book, because it shows a lot of, you know, future events in different places, so you can tell this is this is a book that is going to have repercussions on things beyond itself, and that's what's really cool about it. Not just for the fact that it's written by Nick Spencer or that Emma Rios is doing the art on it, but it is going to have far-reaching implications outside of this title and into the Marvel Universe. If this mini does actually go to series, which I don't think that there's any reason that it shouldn't, because it's really strong. I don't know if they'll be able to keep. I honestly don't know if they'll be able to keep Nick Spencer as a writer, but at least have Emma Rios doing the art, because she's fantabulous. I love her art, and I love it in this issue. You know, it's my only kind of complaint about it, and again, this is kind of more nitpicky than complainy, but it seemed to end like 3 different times. It's like, okay, here's a beat that feels like it should have ended on, but wait, there's more. Okay, well, there's the beat. Yeah, that's the ending beat. It's like, oh no, wait, there is a little bit more here. So it's kind of like, you know, when people complain about Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, how that has like 26 endings. This, you know, it kind of drew it out a little longer than I would have liked to have seen it. I actually would have preferred this if it had been shorter, or if they had just expanded on kind of like the, you know, the A story, the big, you know, the elephant in the room, so to speak. So that was, you know, again, that's my only kind of quibble with this particular book, or with this particular issue. But otherwise, this was such a strong, you know, this was the one Spider Island tie-in where I'm like, okay, I'm on board all the way. And it has largely to do with Nick Spencer, but also largely has to do with Cloak and Dagger, because they're characters that have been kind of sidelined or marginalized throughout the years, and it's cool to see them back again. So, Marvel, get it to series. We'll be right back with part 3 of this week's New Comics Bitches. Stay tuned.